Oh my goodness, scorekeepers, welcome back. Happy New Year! Woohoo!
Yay!
Or all acquaintance be forgot, or whatever the words are. I don't know. What language even is that song? Gaelic or something?
Something, right?
Something like
Right.
that.
I don't even know what it means. Anyway, this is the score. Hi. This is Minnesota Opera's podcast all about opera, classical music, and pop culture from the perspective of three Black queer administrators. And as always, I am your host, Rocky Jones, and I'm here with my wonderful co-hosts, Dr. Lee Bynum. Hello, Dr. Lee Bynum.
Y'all already know who I am. My name is Topher. Sorry, it's the 3 cups of coffee.
Okay. And of course, the luminous, gorgeous, fabulous, intelligent, wonderful Paige Reynolds, aka Iwayo Inawale. Hello.
Hi, happy
are
belated
you?
Kwanzaa.
Yes. Yes. Happy belated Kwanzaa to everyone.
I was gonna say Habari Gani, but not Kwanzaa anymore.
Well, speaking of the holidays, I feel like we haven't done this in forever because last time we did the best of episode. So did y'all have a good December / holiday season? Anything exciting happen? Ooh, what happened with the card, Paige, that you sent your family?
Yes, I had a good Yule season. Yeah, so my family got the card. Well, not my whole family did. So
Maybe we should update for people who perhaps didn't hear that episode.
Right. So I decided to, I knew I wasn't going to make it home for Christmas this year. And I sent my family a Christmas card. But not just any Christmas card. I also came out in that Christmas card as queer and as polyamorous. My family only knows one of my partners, and I introduced the other in that card. So little update. The card made it in time for Christmas, but only my mother has seen it so far.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it is still a developing story.
Okay.
Only my mother has seen it. My dad has not seen it yet. But I feel like he's gonna be fine. Like my little sister's the more sensitive one, so we shall see. I can happily report that I feel like it's in a way bringing me and my mom closer together.
Good.
That and other family stuff. I mean, she's very, very Christian. She's still a pastor, and she still is like, though I may not agree with all of your choices, I still love you. But I mean, so it's not like her total acceptance that's like bringing us together, but I think it's just the honesty.
Yeah.
You know, like the tone of our conversations has changed, and I feel like also like I'm just able to express like myself and my needs as an adult in a different way. So it's just, still like good outcomes so far.
Yeah.
Shout out to my mommy too.
Yeah, shout out to Pastor Reynolds.
Yes.
Well, good. Well, I look forward to hearing more updates as more and more people see the card.
Yeah.
If you want to share, and it was cute.
Friends and family thought that it was really cute. And people who knew me for a long time who were like not my parents were it was nice to hear people say like they were proud of me and things like that. Like old family friends, like my older sister showed some of her friends and they were like, Paige, like, they know me since I was like a toddler, so they're like
Well, we're proud of you too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
absolutely.
That means a lot.
And you know, we raise our parents as much as they raise us, and everything is a process with them, you know.
Yeah, real, very real. I've been talking to other folks recently about parent stuff and
Mhm.
talking about how boomers are coming to like a collective reckoning moment, like
Mhm.
across the board. They're dealing with some things
Yeah.
and with some changes.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
true. It's true. It's like, my grandmother is in hospice care right now.
Mm.
And we're not sure how much longer she will be with us, but she's 102. Um,
Right.
but
Yeah.
watching my father, who's almost 80 years old, for the first time, really have to reckon with, you know, living his life without his mother here on Earth. It's amazing to see just sort of the little boy in him come out.
Yeah.
And it's been like my whole life, he's been sort of this big figure, like he's physically, a big guy, but also his presence is so huge. And to, have this new sort of dialogue with him, it's just been really
Yeah.
eye-opening.
Yeah.
And you say like we're raising our parents as well. It's just like, oh wow, it's just the stages of life that we all move through.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. How was your
But
life though,
anyway,
Rocky? Just
enough
got
about
deep.
that.
How was y'all's holidays?
Yeah.
Good. Good. I was in Virginia. Speaking of parents, my mom had surgery. She had eye surgery. So I was in Virginia, and just by a series of random things, my sisters were out of the country, and my brother and his wife were coming to Virginia like hours after I was coming back here. So it was interesting getting to spend some time with my mom completely by myself, because coming from a family with a bunch of siblings, the amount of hours that I got to spend with either of my parents without other people present are very, very few. So we had like a lot of fun. And it's,
Aw.
my dad passed almost 8 years ago, and my dad was very, very funny, like just like one of those kinds of people, a joke a minute. And I never got to understand how funny my mom was, because she was constantly playing the straight man. And it's been kind of interesting in the last couple of years to realize, oh, my mom is really funny. I had no idea. And getting to spend a lot of time with her, just the two of us, and my sister's stupid dog, but that's a story I'm going to leave right where it is, was a really lovely week. And I was glad that I got to, because she couldn't see because of the surgery while she was recovering, I actually got to take care of her, which was a little bit of a reversal. And it was interesting to have my mom having to tell her to do something, like reminding her, make sure you take your medicine, make sure you put your eye drops in. And a couple of instances was her being like, no, I'm doing this. And I'm being like, mother, I really need you to do this. So yeah, that was interesting. It was a different kind of Christmas, but we had a nice time.
Yeah.
Well, my December was a movie. Well, I think right after our yay Sagittarius season, happy birthday, everybody. After 3 years, I finally got to see what all the fuss was about with all this COVID business. And I can tell you, it is not fun. That sucked. That was awful. I got the full 10-day treatment, and
Oh,
I've gotten all my shots and whatnot, and the new one and everything, but I was symptomatic, baby, and so that was an experience. And when I was in Vancouver, I was driving around with friend of the show, Ashley Foote, and we were talking about COVID, and he was talking about his experience, And he was like, oh, you probably like got it, but you just didn't realize that you got it. Yeah, no. This is how my body reacts to COVID, then I would have noticed. But after that, I recovered just in time for Christmas, and we spent that with my husband's family. And 4 of his nieces are pregnant.
Woo!
4. So next Christmas is gonna be loud.
Do any of them live here? And does anybody need a doula?
Oh,
Oh. I will put them in touch with you.
Tell them to holler. My calendar's open.
One of them is having her baby like now, pretty much. But the other 3 are not due till this spring and summer. So
all right,
I will
now.
absolutely let them know that they have a fabulous doula.
I mean, I could just like doula for all of them, and then they could have like continuity of care. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, doesn't that sound fun? Like, I'm just saying, I'm just throwing things out there, just ideas, you know.
Okay. Oh, I can see this an arc on Born to Love.
Yeah, it's giving season premiere.
It's giving season premiere.
It's giving material, yeah.
But you know, other than that, other than that, no, the whole thing. It's been, other than the COVID, everything was good. Everything was good. And now we're here in 2023.
We made it.
Which is kind of crazy to think about. It's just the last few years have just been an absolute blur. I still think it's 2019 sometimes. But if you're kind of feeling the same way and you are sort of limping into this year, don't blame you. But we have a fantastic guest on the show today. We have the wonderful Ginger Klee. Ginger is an incredible licensed, she's a counselor out of Southern California. And if you are sort of thinking like, oh my God, 2023, I'm not in the place I want to be, I have to go back to my job, and I'm dealing with all of this stress, all of this acculturative stress, and she has some wise words for all of us that we can take into 2023 and our lives, and hopefully, you know, in a much more restive, peaceful state, as much as we can with the state of the world and Kevin McCarthy and all of that business. I can't, we don't have enough time. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have even brought it up. But stay tuned. We'll be right back with Ginger Klee. All right, everybody, welcome back. My goodness, 2023, it is upon us. It is here. It's so crazy to think about. The years are just flying by. But hopefully all of you got to have some time to take a little break over the last couple of weeks, perhaps spend some time with loved ones or just with yourself, pursuing something that you're passionate about, or just resting. But the reality is that, you know, January 2nd, a lot of us are having to head back to whatever we do to earn money and pay the rent. And for a lot of folks of color, a lot of global majority folks, that means going back to a predominantly white institution and doing our best to survive that environment, that system that has not been built for us. And so we wanted to take some time to really think and talk about this issue, and I couldn't think of anyone better to have this conversation with than Ginger Klee. Welcome to the show, Ginger. How are you today?
Hello. I am doing all right, and I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. We're so happy that you're here. And just a little bit about Ginger. Ginger is a queer, multi-ethnic Korean mental health specialist, licensed professional counselor in private practice in Orange County, California. She specializes in treating trauma and acculturative stress and treating the queer and trans and BIPOC communities. She treats adolescents and families and is also an adjunct psychology professor, and she teaches about the intersectionality of gender, sex, sexuality, and ethnicity. So that's amazing.
Cool. Super cool.
Super necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Honestly, some of that like just fell into my lap. Like in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that makes sense that that's my career path. But if you had told me 10 years ago that this is what my career path would have been, I would have had no idea.
So what steered you into that path?
Yeah.
How did you start?
Well, I struggled a lot growing up, and particularly like my teenage years, and I benefited from therapy. But my mindset has always been I wanted to help people in ways that I was, but I also wanted to help people in ways that I was not. And I would say maybe unfortunately or fortunately, the last, I think 5-6 years really emphasized that much more what I didn't get in my adolescence and early adulthood years. What was lacking in the multiple therapists that I'd seen over the years. So I think a big motivation is becoming that therapist that I never got, especially as a like queer, multi-ethnic Korean person. Even the therapist I had 5 years ago it became blaringly obvious, like, oh, we can't work on those things. And yeah, so that was not fun, especially, you know, at that point being a full-blown therapist at that point, making that realization. So yeah, and then obviously 2016 and certain political things, I don't really know how I should want to go there, but that made what I do that much more in demand. I mean, even though it was sad, right? But honestly, it's always been needed. I just think that 2016 helped people realize, oh, I actually do need this. I deserve this. And there's more and more resources and options for people to pursue it, which is really great. Kind of like something really terrible multiple terrible things had to happen, for more awareness and for more value, to be put in mental health, especially for queer BIPOC people.
Yeah, that definitely resonates. And I think here for us, if it wasn't 2016, then it was definitely 2020.
Yes.
Then
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people in my life I knew were just like, okay, I need help. This just became too much. This just became way out of my zone to handle alone. So yeah, I think I would love to dig more into, I think one of the things that kind of came up when you talking about starting, you know, what it's like to be in a space that's not really made for you, and that even comes up in therapy. But like, what is that? Your explanation of that, for what that impact has had on us, like collectively as BIPOC folks. Let's just get into it, because I think we're gonna it's like deep. It sounds to some folks, I'm aware that it may sound like a simple question, like, yeah, what are the impacts of that? But like, I know we're about to spiral into a conversation that is gonna go into all kinds of ways. Yeah.
I mean, really the biggest place we could start from and then narrow down is like just systemically, right? Systemically, this is still a not just white centric, but like Eurocentric, colonization centric system. And that's unfortunately in everything in our country, even in the mental health field. You know, my training was still very much based on colonization, white culture. And, you know, and that's every single system in this country. And even though we're trying to break those systems and create new ones, we were literally fighting hundreds of years of what was considered the standard, what was considered norm, right? And it's really hard to realize that, especially like, oh no, this business has only been around for 20 years or 10 years, or it's brand new. It's like, okay, but if you haven't done any active work to, you know, change your foundation and also your own personal values, we all have internalized racism, we all have that. So if you haven't done the personal work, then it's still going to be there, at least to some degree, right? And that's what's so hard, because it takes so much more work and so much more self-awareness and also personal accountability to really make something different. Yeah. And then when you're a BIPOC person in a predominantly white space, a lot of times we feel like there's just something wrong with us, right? That's always the initial, right? Yep. I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. Because a lot of us are resistant. I've even had clients who are resistant to identifying and realizing that there's something systemically racist going on, because they don't want to see their company that way. They don't want to see their peers, maybe their friends, their mentors that way. But, and also it is really defeating to think of it that way. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But once you start seeing that, it helps you realize what you want instead, what you deserve. I don't know. I feel like I'm now going in like multiple different directions. But I just like to go back to like what you're actually asking, which is like, what's it like to be in those kind of spaces? It's a different culture, right? Mm-hmm. And culture means so many things. Culture means values, morals, beliefs, standards. And so that's why a lot of times we don't feel like we belong, or we realize there's something wrong, because it's based on white colonization culture. And many of us, even myself, where I like the term multi-ethnic, because mixed, some people were like that term, but I feel like multi-ethnic fits best for me because it means like multicultural, essentially. Even someone like myself, where I'm, part white. I don't know, there's just still not a great language for that. But my Korean self, like, those values don't fit in with white colonization cultural values. And so if I'm in a business or a career or an educational path that's based in that, it's going to hit conflict. And you can feel like, how can you stay true to yourself, but then still succeed in your field or still succeed in your academics? When a lot of times what's anything different than white colonization culture is deemed wrong.
So one of the first time that I heard you speak about this was in 2020 at Art Equity. Shout out Art Equity.
Art Equity.
An organization that means a lot to this show. But at their inaugural Surviving Predominantly White Institutions series of talks. And one of the things that you brought up, and I think that what you're talking about right now is the term acculturative stress, which I had never heard of before. And when you explained it, it made complete sense. And then thinking about all of the psychological, physiological effects of that stress and racialized trauma, for me was just sort of like, because like some of them are pretty obvious, right? You come home, you're filled with this sadness or anger, and you pick a fight with your partner, or you kick the dog, or you drink a bottle of wine. But some of the ones, there were a number of physiological, psychological effects that like I hadn't even really like thought about. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about acculturative stress and some of the ways that it can show up, it can manifest.
Absolutely. I think the first thing is to define acculturation, but also in comparison to simulation. Most people, like in my classroom, obviously it's a small sample, but in my classroom and in the talks that I've done, and the clients that I see, I'll ask them, like, have you heard of the term assimilation? And 70-80% of them will be like, yeah, I know that term. But when I ask if anyone's heard of acculturation, it's maybe 10% or less. And that in itself is a perfect example of colonization, culture being so dominant, because assimilation technically in a cultural lens means that someone from a minority culture is becoming more like the majority culture. And then especially with way colonizers used this, it was, you need to become like us, right? We're better than you, and so you're inferior, what you do is wrong, is bad, is I don't know if I want to use a term that came in my head, but what you're doing is wrong or bad, less than. And so yes, become like us, dress like us, practice our religion, our work ethic, etc. And acculturation is a natural or more natural process where you're of the minority culture, and you've now moved, well, you're a minority culture because you've moved into a place of a different culture, right? And by having just long-term exposure to this different culture that's all around you, it's naturally going to change your values a little bit. It's going to change the way you live life. You know, when my mom immigrated here from Korea, she went from obviously a 100% Korean culture, collectivistic Asian culture, to this more individualistic white culture. And so that's changed a little bit about how her family functions, right? It's not just about only focusing on, not only, focusing on taking care of everyone, and everything you do is a huge reflection of your family, and you're supposed to do every choice you make is supposed to serve your family, right? And but my siblings and myself are first generation born here, because we were surrounded by individualistic culture as well. It's like, well, yes, I want to serve my family, but I also do want to serve myself. Can I do both? And so that shifted our behavior, that created conflict. That's where that stress comes in, right? I don't want to betray my mom and my ancestors and my heritage by not following what they've always done, but I'm not just Korean anymore, right? Nor is my mom, which thankfully helped her adjust a little bit with us. Doesn't always happen. So it just was a natural progression. Now, I want to acknowledge that maybe not all of it was natural or by choice, or like some of it was due to the racism my mom dealt with. Some of it was due to the racism that I grew up with. This pressure to change a little bit is still there, but you still can make an empowered choice to shift things based on your experiences, which being exposed to different cultures can do. So that's what makes acculturation so different, is it's much less by force, and again can just be a natural progression of change. And it's a mixture, it's a combination, it's not a either or, right? Which is simulation generally has that expectation of either or. You're either inferior or you're a part of our group, right? And you see that in the workspace, right? You either are with us and like us and do everything like us, or you're bad, you're wrong, you're fired. And that's just, what do you do with that? Just like I felt like I was betraying, you know, my mom and my grandmother, and my Korean ancestors by being a little different. You can feel like you have to choose between that and success in a predominantly white space. Yeah.
Wow. Ooh, just sitting with that for a second.
Yeah.
So, could you maybe say a little bit about observations you may have around how people of the global majority may have trepidations to therapy for cultural reasons or for some of the reasons that you have just described, and maybe how you approach talking people through that? Because I think that's the thing that has definitely shown up in my life, right? And people not thinking about therapy as being of our culture, or perhaps another instance of, you know, some sort of imposed assimilation from the outside.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm so glad you asked that, because I've even had a couple clients flat out say to me, like, this is a white thing. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like self-growth and healing is not a white thing. Now, some white people have appropriated some of ways that we heal. Looking at you, yoga and meditation. But you know, even though maybe, I mean, again, I speak, of course, from a Western lens, right? Being born and raised in the US and in California, but we all deserve healing. And honestly, therapy, though, of course, therapy here in the US is still going to be very Eurocentric. Therapy can incorporate and be multicultural. It all depends on the therapist, right? So that's the way I try to help my clients see it, of like, I'm not going to be trying to quote unquote make you heal in a direction that you don't want to heal in. Actually, that wouldn't even be healing. I'm not going to lead you in my idea of healing. That's why I love being a feminist therapist. And this isn't the only kind of therapy that's like this, but this is why I became a feminist therapist. Was we are not the expert of our clients. We're really actually a guide and resource for them to get better, which I think is the way to be more culturally sensitive and attuned, right? If someone came to me and said that I had inappropriate boundaries with my Korean side of my family, and they're doing so from an individualistic lens, of course it's going to seem like it's inappropriate. You know, me dropping everything and moving in with my mom at one point in my early 30s, a lot of my, especially like white friends, were like, what? Why'd you do that?
Mhm.
That's so
Absolutely.
weird.
Yep.
But one of my closest friends even asked his mother, would you want me to do that for you? And she was like, no. You know, but, and so some people would have thought that that was inappropriate and just like, I'm too close to my mom. But in Korean culture, that's absolutely what you do without question. Anyways, like, so you have to make sure that you find a therapist who's sensitive to, and understands that and is willing to do the work, right? So that is where I can understand why some people would feel really turned off by therapy, or think therapy is just a white person thing, if they're only looking at it from that lens. But the good news is that more and more therapists out there, and more programs for therapists are adding in that intersectional lens and emphasizing it, instead of it just being like a side note, which is frustrating. The other, I think, cultural obstacle can be, and this exists especially in a lot of collectivistic cultures, Korean culture included, is, you know, this isn't anyone's business. I can't invite someone else into my business, into my family's business. This is private. You know, I know that some of my family's trepidation with therapy, and even me going into therapy, like, again, my choice is negatively affecting them. And that's where maybe I would lean into the acculturation piece a little bit of, I understand that it feels like a betrayal. It feels inappropriate. But your healing, your individual healing, is actually best for the collective. The way I look at family systems is like a gear shift. I think that's what it's called, where you have like the circles with like the bumps and they all line up. Is that what that's called? Anyone know what I'm talking about?
I think so. I don't. Do any of us drive? I don't think any of us
Cogs,
do.
gears. I don't know.
Oh no, wait, Iwayo, you drive.
I mean, I drive like not the gear shift of a car.
A bicycle, like on a
Oh.
Bicycle.
My bad.
Yeah. You know, I use this metaphor so much. I really should learn what it's called. But just imagine, like, you know, again, like we've all seen, like, in some way, like it's like steampunk, right? Those circles and they have the little ridges, and those ridges fit together.
Yeah,
right?
yes. Gotcha.
And so when you move one circle, it moves all the circles, right? Even if the circles are different shapes and sizes and in different spots, because they're all connected. And so again, I think especially for collectivistic families, that's so much more tight knit, right? That's so much more emphasized on how important that is to be a collective unit. But when you go to therapy, especially by yourself, you're going to shift. Your shape is going to change, or you're going to move in a different direction. And even though that can feel, again, wrong and isolating, like you're betraying your family, if your family wants to stay connected, they have to choose to grow with you in order for the gears to still all move together. Enough collective change and healing and growth can happen so that they stay moving together. But that means that everyone has to change. Now, of course, if someone's really resistant to that, then that can create space, right? Because they still want to stay in their system and move the way they're going to move. But if they want to still stay connected and move with you, they have to move. And so that's why when I introduce people to therapy, I tell them you need to be prepared that this isn't just going to affect you. It's going to affect other people in your life, hopefully all for the better.
Yeah.
So therapy can still be a collective movement, collective growth, even if not everyone is going to therapy. My healing has helped so many people in my family, not like it's my responsibility, but you know, even with some of my Korean family members, again, who are very anti-therapy, they saw changes in me. They saw my growth. They saw some of the peace that I was able to establish. And it helped me set different boundaries with them and communicate with them differently, heal some of that intergenerational trauma that existed. And that was, again, to some degree, healing for them. And again, they shifted and changed with me. So that's the other, I think, again, big obstacle that can exist in resistance to therapy is I'm betraying my family, but like really your healing can benefit your family.
Oh, 100%. I mean, anybody who listens to the show knows that I love a good old nasty hour of therapy every week, child. And you know, and I've been in therapy sort of on and off since I was probably 12 or 13. My mom was a psych major, so as soon as I was veered from the script, it was like, go get in the therapist's office. But I've been in therapy now for about 4 years. And I mean, it's been fantastic. It's fabulous having a therapist that shares some of my identities. But I think like at first, like it had been a long time and it was kind of like, you know, getting back on the bike, you know, trying to, you know, and at first it was like, you know, well, tell me about your dad. Don't you talk about my dad. But now it's like the last time I went home, I was able to sit down with my mother and we just had this beautiful conversation for like 3 hours where I was able to be like more open about some of the things that I experienced and went through, and she was able to talk about some of the things that she was going through, and we went all the way back like several generations and talked about several generations worth of trauma, and it was just this beautiful conversation where if I hadn't had the tools that I learned in therapy to be able to sort of hold that space for myself and my mother, like now we're even closer than we were before. And it's a beautiful thing. So y'all get in some therapy, like for real.
I do think you bring up a good thing though to look for, which is, as ideal as it is to try to find a therapist who has similar identities to you, it can be really hard, right? Especially because, by the way, I love that term global majority. I've heard it before, but I'm like, oh yeah, why don't I use that more often? But unfortunately, being a minority in this country, especially if you add in again other intersectional identities, right? So as a queer, multi-ethnic Korean, I'm a minority and a minority. And I mean, my added obstacle is also being connected to a lot of queer BIPOC therapists. So I'm like, you're my friend, you can't be my therapist. But because even I live in Southern California, so there are, Southern California has the highest population of Korean Americans in the U.S. And our queer community is definitely better than when I lived in the South. But it can be so hard to find someone who has similar identities to you, especially the more rural your areas are. But again, even in Southern California, there's not enough of this. The amount of client inquiries I get where, again, they have so many aligning identities, and I'm like, I can't see all of you. I'm sorry. It's terrible. But one thing I'd say is take advantage of virtual therapy. Now, that's not for everybody, but one of the good things that came out of 2020 was more flexibility and some accessibility to resources like therapy. So, for instance, I have some clients that live in Northern California, which is like, California is huge. I kind of forget how huge it is. Literally, it would be a 8 to 10 hour drive to get to them, or them to get to me, really,
wow.
right? Yeah. And, but they don't have to worry about that because I literally see them on Zoom. And so as long as the therapist is licensed and lives in the state you are in, you can see them, even if, again, it's a day's drive away. I mean, shoot, I have clients that are 30-minute drive away and still just want to be on Zoom because it's convenient. But if you really get struggling to find a therapist, especially of a similar identity to yours, that's driving distance, if you can be open to virtual therapy, that can increase your options exponentially. Now, of course, not all states have a lot of variety, but again, at least it expands your options. The other thing that if you'd like, I can email to you, and if you have a way to share with people who
Absolutely.
I cannot take record or credit for this. Dr. Raquel Martin is a therapist TikToker that I follow, and she's incredible. Also a BIPOC therapist herself. And she created this document of questions to ask your therapist. And this isn't just for BIPOC or queer people. This is really for anybody. A lot of people don't realize, like, a first session with a therapist or a consultation call isn't just to see if the therapist will take you. It's, do you want to take on that therapist? You are paying for this service, or your insurances, which is you're still paying for it in some way. Like, you are hiring them. Right. Of course, they could also, I guess, burn you down or say that you're not the right fit. But even if they say you're the right fit, you have to agree with them. And so this is an opportunity for you to ask them questions. And a lot of people, especially if never done therapy or have had terrible therapy, don't know what to ask or what to look for. And honestly, even if they don't answer or don't want to answer these questions, that's also very telling. Right. If you don't have a therapist, if you have a therapist, or if you're talking to a therapist who's not comfortable answering somebody's questions because I think it's too personal, I would not see them. Because you telling me how you practice anti-racism in your practice, or like if it's a white therapist, like How is it being a white therapist serving a client that looks like me? If they're like, oh, that's personal. Oh,
No.
Even
No,
if
no,
it's
no,
a
no,
personal
no,
question,
no.
you should answer it,
No.
because my racial identity is also personal. Some therapists won't agree with that. Some therapists, but again, to me, that's a white supremacy colonization viewpoint. This that drives me nuts in the therapy world. Is therapists are supposed to be a blank slate. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't check my Koreanness at the door.
No.
Like,
Nor should you,
that.
obviously.
Right? Now, obviously, I don't want to impose my own values and stuff on a client, but my identities do interact with the client. That's just human nature. That's what just the same thing with like white people saying they don't have culture. I'm like, you do. You impose it on everyone.
Absolutely.
Just this your idea of you're the default is part of the problem. So anyway, yeah. So some therapists can still have that mentality, and that's a very problematic one. So some of the more specialized questions geared towards what we're talking about would be something like, I pulled it up. Where is it? Oh yeah. What are your views on the connection between racism and mental health? Just go right for it. Right?
Spicy.
Right? Are you comfortable discussing racism, social justice, and cultural issues? If they're like, oh no, those things, like, I just stay apolitical. No. Again, as a feminist therapist, the political is personal. Now, do I have some clients who have different political beliefs than me? Yes, but I am still going to bring political discussion into the room, especially if it has something to do with their identity. Again, I'm not going to bring it up as a this kind of political person, you should believe this. No, that's different, right? Again, that's inappropriate. But I'm going to ask how politics are affecting them. Ask them if they have experience working with identities that are important to you. I currently have a cisgender straight white therapist, which is 99% of therapists I've had in my life. And I asked her these really hard questions. Have you worked with the Korean community before? Have you worked with the queer community before? What did that work look like? Do you continue this work? This is me going off script of this thing, but I think that's important. A lot of people think that, oh no, I've researched it, I'm done. No. Culture shifts and changes. Politics shift and change, as we have seen. And so if you're not constantly paying attention, well, constantly is too much pressure. Consistently paying attention, you're going to miss something. That's actually a shift that's also started happening in my field. And you'll still see this word used a lot, which is a culturally competent therapist, which isn't the worst phrasing in the world, but it's also not great. I appreciate that they're bringing culture into the room, that they're acknowledging that white shouldn't just be the default lens we look at everyone. But competence creates this expectation that we're done. You got your degree, you took those special classes, you did your continuing education units 5 years ago. Gold star. No. So the new term is, well, the newer term was culturally sensitive, so that's slightly better. But my favorite, that's being used a little bit more, but not often enough, is culturally humble. I have to continually be humble that I will never know all of it, that there will always be more to learn, that this is a literal lifelong learning process of whatever identities I am going to work with, even identities that I belong to. This is a continual lifelong journey. This is, again, a lifelong educational job, or part of my job. I have to be humble enough to acknowledge that I will not always get it, that I will not understand all of it, and that I cannot understand fully what it is like to not be an identity that's not mine. I'm not going to make my client feel like they have to educate me. That's another big problem.
Yeah.
But I will be humble enough to admit when I don't know, and have the resources and make the time to learn. That's what I love about that shift in phrase.
That's beautiful. That's awesome.
Truly. I have Rocky knows I have somewhat of a burning question about the intersection of gender and sexuality and all of this, and especially for people of color. And as we're talking about culture and we talk about like assimilation and acculturation, I have been thinking about what happened in 2020 when we all had to stay at home. And what my experiences talking to folks and what that has done with folks reflecting on their gender and sexuality, especially since you are, I mean, at least I know for me, being removed from the places you usually have to go every day, being removed from a lot of the imposed gender standards or sexuality standards or monogamy standards or all of that about how we relate to each other. Like, once we're removed from all that, something happened for a lot of folks. Something happened for a lot of folks.
It was so liberating.
Yeah, and I wonder if you could like talk about that and what has kind of happened in the past couple years with us reckoning with our genders.
No, I love that. And you're actually the first person that I think that's really said that so plainly to me. I'm like, that's so true. I mean, I saw it in my clients. And of course I saw that on TikTok trends where a lot of supposedly particularly straight women were like, oh, why am I attracted to this? But I think you actually really touched on the main component, which was even though being home and quarantine, and there's so many terrible things that came from that, and we're still dealing with the ramifications of, at the same time, something that became quite liberating was being away from and having a significant break from these constant gender rules, these social rules that were imposed on us everywhere we went. Being home forced us to, again, take a big break from it, and taking a break from something like that helps you reevaluate it. Like, why am I doing this? Like, for me, it was makeup. Not like I wore the most makeup ever. I'm not the most feminine person in the world, but I honestly felt like I could not be professional. I could not look professional without some semblance of makeup on. That, and honestly, for me, even though I am a cisgender person, I've taken more liberties with my hair, courtesy of 2020 and quarantine, of being like, people are just going to see this on a webcam, whatever, who cares? Because again, we just didn't have this daily constant pressure to conform, right? And so and honestly, the way people expect us to and just walk and talk are related to gender, right? That's gender expression. And so if you're free from those pressures of gender expression, it can help you really explore gender in itself. Oh, I like, wearing my hair or presenting myself in this way. What does that mean? It doesn't always, of course, mean a gender identity, but it can, right? I haven't dealt with all of these like feminine expectations, or this female role expectation. I'm not around all of these maybe more stereotypical feminine people. And now that I'm free of that, I realize maybe how much I don't align with that anymore. Or I never really aligned with it. I just felt like I did because it was around me all of the time.
Ooh, been there.
Yeah, so that's what one of the benefits of stepping back from something can be. It can either really help reinforce, like, oh no, I miss that, right? I need that back. But it can also be a, why was I dealing with that and doing that every single day? I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to step back into those shoes, step back into that role, step back into that identity label, right? The other, I think, component of 2020 that I think helped people as well is a term called virtual urbanization. That's existed for a while. It's existed since the internet. Well, at least internet being more accessible to people. So what? Oh God, how many years is that? Almost 30 years. Because I think the mid 90s is when AOL sent, people had AOL discs, and I feel like that's when when the internet became more widely accessible. So virtual urbanization has been a thing really since then. So almost 30 years, or about 30 years. But obviously being quarantined, people did that a lot more. People had a lot more time and not a lot of other things to do. And so even if there were already some questions being asked of yourself, there was a lot more people to now interact with, a lot more groups to look for, to be a part of, which also I think was a big draw for that too. I've not really looked at Reddit before, or I wasn't on TikTok really before quarantine, as many people weren't. And it invited and had a lot more people willing to take that invitation, I think, to more virtual community.
So this brings up a question for me. So, now that we're in this time period where a lot of people are being called to go back to work in person, are called to be back in the world physically. And I know for me, during that quarantine period, I made a lot of changes like everybody did. Kind of looking at your life and being like, I like this, I don't like this, I want to change this. How do I change this? And one of the fears that I brought up with to my therapist was like this fear of like going out into the world, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with these microaggressions again, you're dealing with all that acculturation again. And I like this person that I've become. I like all of these changes that I've made. I'm super excited about like what my life is. Like, it's really nice to, sit here in the basement, and the only microaggression I get is my cat yelling at me if the dinner is late. And she's black, so is that really a microaggression? I don't know. But sort of going back into the world, stepping back into these systems that, are so inequitable and not built for us, like sort of going back to the beginning of this conversation, what are some of the things that people can do in order to sort of begin that healing, continue that healing? What's your take on that?
I'm glad you brought us full circle, because honestly, we kind of naturally went back there, because just as it can be so great to be free of all these social, especially gender constructs that exist. It doesn't. We also we're free from, or had a lot less racial microaggressions and to deal with. And I want to really normalize how hard it is to go back. A metaphor I like of this is like, say you're used to dealing with chronic pain every day. Actually, I feel like that's a little less universal. My wife deals with that, but this is going to be more gross, but that's fine. say you're in a room all the time, you're in this room every day, and you don't realize that the room smells, right? Or maybe you like start to notice a smell, right? Like maybe someone left, you know, a burger in the trash. So and when it gets really bad, you start to really notice it. But even then, because you're in it every day, you don't notice how bad it is until you maybe throw it away, wash your clothes, or actually, no, hold on, sorry. The burger's still in the trash. My bad. You walk out of the room, you leave the house, and then you go back into that room and you cannot stand the smell. You were dealing with that smell for maybe days or weeks, but you got a break from the smell. You got to breathe fresh air. And then you went back into it and you can't even stand it for a second. That's what it feels like to have a huge break from racism, racial microaggressions, queer phobia. And then you go back into it, and it literally feels like a smack in the face. And it's like, well, I was dealing with this for years. What's different? You had a break from it. And it, again, probably put into perspective how terrible it was. And made you question, like, why am I dealing with this at all? And also just like your tolerance for it's gone completely down. So I guess the question is that, because this is really hard to answer for just in one scenario. What I'd say is if you have to stay, because not everyone has, well, people would argue that you should always go, but if you feel like you need to stay or that you can't go, then you need to find other spaces to heal. This does go back actually to a point I made with our equity a lot of we can't heal until we're done surviving. And that's such a hard idea to sit with.
Yeah.
Because if you feel like there's no place that you can feel safe in, then you just feel like you can feel hopeless. But I'll try to bring us to some hope here. But first, of course, I have to go back to the metaphor. So I always go with it's like you're in the forest with a bear, and obviously bears can hurt you, unfortunately, right? So as long as you're constantly in fear of being attacked by the bear and having to run away from the bear, some minor scrapes and whatnot that you might get being in survival mode can heal, of course, right? But if you have a significant injury that requires you to stay in one space and slow down and actually really take care of yourself, that's not going to happen while you're still running away from a bear. And even though you could argue that because we still have a lot of systemic issues in this country, that everything's a bear, we can find at least one. You can just start with just one space that's free from a bear. Ideally, that would hopefully be your home, but of course, that's not true for everyone. For some of my clients, the first reprieve is my therapy office. That's actually why, even though it would be cheaper for me to just work from home, because I probably could, I will never give up my office, because I want to be able to provide that at least that one safe space for people. Maybe it's for me, for a time, it was this like queer coffee shop in Long Beach. Or the Korean market. A friend's house, a chosen family member's house. The more spaces we can make or find or create even that offer us some safety can help at least decrease the amount of injury that would then happen in the workspace. Sometimes that's not enough, depending on how problematic the work is. And of course, so many of us spend more time at work than we do in any other space. But if you really can't leave, if you really have to stay in a predominantly white institution that's quite harmful to you, and finding and identifying or creating spaces like that can really help. Again, even virtually, it's not for everybody or it's not enough, but early 2020, me and some of my friends who are all Asian therapists, we created a group for each other, just to support each other through what was going on, especially with the increase in anti-Asian hate crimes that was happening. And so again, we didn't know of another group at the time, especially us being therapists, and so we just made our own. Yeah, that's pivotal.
Absolutely.
And thank you for saying that, Ginger, because I think for a lot of the folks who listen to this podcast, they're not only in sort of, these primarily white spaces, they're in a field that is sort of completely infused with white dominant culture, and shifting where you work, you're not going to be able to get away from some of these systemic issues. And I really appreciate having that perspective for just thinking about what it means to work in a field like classical music, where you're not easily going to be able to circumvent a lot of these things.
Yeah, I mean, as great as it would be to just be able to have enough time, money, and resources, and maybe less racism, to just create your own subsect,
just a little,
right? That'd be great. But yeah, because unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon in a lot of areas, including classical music, unfortunately. But yeah, then again, I don't want to make it sound so easy, but just like this, right? You all created this. And this is a safe space, probably for all of you. And then hopefully the people that listen to this.
I hope so.
Right? Because it's visibility, it's addressing these issues. It's, hearing people of your community talking about something that you love that a lot of people don't associate with your community. That's huge. Just like even though now it's going off Broadway, which makes me sad. Well, actually, it was never on Broadway, but it was there's a K-pop musical that's I think actually closing Sunday. Which makes me sad. Never made it to Broadway, but the fact that even just became a thing was just incredible.
Yeah.
That's one of my passions is musicals, right? So just seeing that, even if it didn't last that long, they created that space. I cannot imagine what it was like to be that cast, that crew, a predominantly Asian, artists, right? And that's what you all done here for classical music, which I think is wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah, thank you. So wonderful to hear from all of you. Such great questions, and hearing just a little bit of your own experiences is just always a good reminder for me of why I do what I do and why I talk about what I talk about.
Well, and what you do is so important. It's not even funny. I can't even stress how important it is. So we'll have lots of resources for folks in the show notes. But in the meantime, is there anywhere that people can follow you?
So I have a website that's my wife is very lovingly working on. I'm very lucky. I married a marketing person.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, social media and me professionally, even personally, don't go that well together. As much as I'd love to have more of a professional social media presence, but my website does have some resources, and I have a couple of ideas for things in the future. But currently, I'm mainly just focusing on being a therapist, being a professor, and the consulting that I do. But with that said, even though I'm only one person, if anyone wanted to reach out, even if you're not in my state, I'm more than happy to send additional resources to give you some of my time. If you're looking for support, I do my best to try to help people find a therapist, demystify therapy, that's something that I'm more than happy to also do. Again, even if you don't live in my state, you don't have to live in my state to get that kind of help.
That's amazing. Everybody, check out Ginger. Go get some help. Go get a therapist. You are not alone. And we will be right back. Thank you, Ginger.
Thank you.
And we are back once again. Thank you so much to Ginger Klee. I stan.
Yes, so good.
Oh my God. I can't. We have to have her back on the show.
Oh, definitely.
That was
helping us get our mentals right.
Thank you.
Love
right.
it.
And I just, you all know me. I need to get my mentals right all the time. But it's a perfect segue because something that always makes me mentally happy is our favorite segment of the show. Paige, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly with a baseball bat, peanut butter jelly with a baseball bat. Hey.
Yes. That is correct. It is time for PBJ, Pure Black Joy, celebrating all of the Black people, things, places, and ideas that are making us happy this week. I'm just going to start out real quick because my Pure Black Joy this week is a Dr. Lee Bynum.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
I am very proud of you. I am very happy for you. I'm very excited for you because you have some big news that was announced over the holidays.
I do.
So would you like to share that with our audience?
Yes, I will, just in case they don't follow me on LinkedIn and aren't aware of the goings on.
Well, there was a whole press release, child.
I know. They did, didn't they?
Seated in the papers.
Well, perhaps you have seen or heard, but I have accepted a new role at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts in my beloved Manhattan, and I will be heading back shortly. Actually, by the time the show drops, I'll be kind of packed-ish, but I will be assuming the role of Chief Education Officer on February 1st. I'm super, super excited about this opportunity to focus on something that I'm very, very passionate about, and getting the opportunity to work across disciplines again, and being able to support a new generation of people of wide and diverse backgrounds all across the world, getting exposed and introduced to the performing arts. It's been an extraordinary time here in Minnesota. I've met some absolutely lovely people and have had the chance to do some work I'm really, really proud of. And I'm certainly grateful to Ryan and our board chair, Nadej Souvenir, and everybody at Minnesota Opera for this really spectacular opportunity. And, you know, I will miss everyone here and miss everything except for this lovely weather. But there are a lot of things I'm excited about with this new role, and it's also a really important opportunity to go home at a time that I need to be closer to my family for a couple of reasons. But I will be continuing as co-host of The Score as a quarter of a four-legged chair that needs all four legs to function, including the fourth leg that you don't usually get to see. Actually, this is a podcast, you can't see any of the legs. But shout to Emilia, who does a lot to keep the show running as well, and everybody else on the Impact team. So yeah, thank you. This is a bit of pure Black joy to be able to go home and do work I'm passionate about at the, you know, Lincoln Center, which is like the home team kind of thing. So
I mean,
yeah.
it's incredible. Like, you should be so proud of
Amazing.
yourself.
Oh, thank
And
you.
we are so proud of you. And I mean, the past couple of years, I have learned so much from you. I see you as sort of the older brother that I never had, the much, much,
Aw.
much, 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 much older brother. No, and of course, you know, my co-host, my boss, my friend, all of those things. And so I'm gonna miss you terribly, but not so much because, you know, we're gonna continue doing this show. And it's gonna
Exactly.
be pretty much exactly the same. You know, we might reevaluate this summer to see you know, if we want to make any changes, if things need to schedules and all of those things. And of course we will keep everyone abreast of those changes. But I mean, what can I say? You're amazing and we love you.
Oh, thank you. And I love y'all right back. And I'm very glad. It was important. This was like literally the first thing we talked about after I mentioned having the new job, that we were going to continue with the show. So I definitely want to make sure people who are listening know that this is not just a fun thing we do at work, but it's actually become something more significant to all of us. And I am really grateful for the opportunity to continue these lovely Friday morning conversations.
Yes.
Yay, me too.
And you
So
know,
excited.
and you know, Paige, I don't think we expressly talked about you know, you left Minnesota Opera full time you know, back in February to focus on doula work and abolition work and all of that. You know, amazing stuff that you do, you know, and we've talked about it in bits and pieces here and there
Yeah.
on the show. So it's a little strange that I'm the only one left at Minnesota Opera, I guess. But I'm just so glad that I get to spend this time with the two of you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Likewise, it felt important right away to like keep doing the show no matter what. 'Cause I'm like, yeah, like y'all the gay cousins I always wanted.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So yeah, the feeling is mutual. Love getting to kick it with y'all on Friday mornings.
Yay.
That's just a little love fest.
No.
Virtual hugs, virtual hugs. Well, I guess that's gonna about do it for this week. Yeah. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. And please feel free to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening to your favorite podcast. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really, really, really will help us out, especially one with words and especially one with 5 stars. I'm not going into this year with any of that 3-star, 4-star, 1-star mess.
Don't start the year with negativity.
You keep that to yourself. And of course, tell your friends about us. Any words of wisdom before we go?
Oh, Jesus. You'd think we'd be better at this.
Well, I think Ginger. Just go back and listen to everything that Ginger said.
She did.
There you go.
All of that.
all of it.
Yep.
And get you a therapist.
That as well.
That's a word of wisdom for everyone. You probably need one. I'm just saying. All right, that's it. We've got stuff to do, places to be. Love y'all. Bye.